英語の試験対策にプレッシャー感じていませんか？どんなに時間かけて勉強しても思うような結果が得られないこともあります。今日はベルリッツのテスト対策教材を開発したエリさんにお話を聞いてきました。今すぐに始められる簡単なコツを教えてくれましたので、勉強の成果を出したいという方はぜひご覧ください。Okay, so in our last video we talked about pronunciation and you gave some great advice on how to improve your pronunciation. In this video I really want to talk about tests. And the reason why is because I've taught a lot of your test preparation material and you have developed basically all of our test preparation material for young learners.
For young learners, yeah.
I noticed that in my classes when I was teaching these materials, I would go into the class and the goal would seem impossible. For example, it's reading a passage and then answering questions, but I couldn't imagine my students confidently answering these questions. But by the end of the lesson, they always achieved the goals that were set. So my first question for you is, how did you become interested in developing these test prep materials?
Again, we have my children to thank for that.
Yep.
So I have two children who are half Japanese and half Scottish. And because they were born and brought up in Japan, obviously they went through the ACHEM process at elementary school, junior high school, and high school. And at first I thought, well, they're basically native speakers of English. They don't need to prepare for these tests. They'll just do them. But they did the tests and didn't actually get such great results. And I realized that it's not enough just to practice your English. You also actually need to practice some test techniques, like time management is really important in these tests, or being aware of the specific things that examiners are looking out for helps focus how you study.
Yeah.
So I started creating worksheets for my own children to complete, and then eventually those worksheets became the Berlitz 4 Skills material, which is our test preparation for young learners.
There's so many materials that you can use to prepare for tests, especially as an adult learner of English, and it can be really overwhelming. Why do you think the test preparation in itself is so difficult?
I think sometimes learners tend to focus just on the end result. So they'll say, I'm doing this test. If I can get an extra 200 points, I can get a promotion at my company.
Yeah.
So their focus is on getting those extra 200 points. But that's such a big gap between where they are now and where they want to be. It is overwhelming and it can become very demotivating because the first stumble that you hit, you're like, I'm never going to get there. It's too far. So at Berlitz, we really focus on breaking things down into small, manageable chunks. The other thing that we do a lot is really celebrate small achievements that you make along the way to keep your motivation up so that we can keep you going until you get to your endpoint.
So as you mentioned, it's really difficult when you have to achieve a huge test goal. What advice do you have for people that have quite big goals for their English tests and they're feeling overwhelmed?
So my first tip is to use a technique called prioritize, strategize, and incentivize.
Okay.
So prioritize means that you really need to analyze the test that you're taking and think about which sections you're weakest at, which sections have the most point value to them, and really prioritize those sections. So there's no point, spending time studying the listening part of the test when it's only 15% of the final result. And actually, I'm quite good at listening. What I need to do is to focus on the reading part of the test, which is 45% of the final mark, and that's the one that I'm weak at.
Yeah.
So you prioritize the part of the test that will give you the biggest return on your investment.
Would you say a good way to kind of find out your priorities is by taking one practice test first?
Yes, take your practice test and really look at where you score lowly and think about, okay, where should I invest my time on studying? So that's prioritize. Strategize, it means you need to have SMART goals. Do you know what SMART goals are?
Yes, because we use them at Berlitz. So it's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and time-bound.
That's right. So rather than having a very vague goal like, oh, I'm doing this test in 3 months, I want to increase my score by 200 points, that's a terrible goal to set yourself. Smart goal would be to say something like, okay, by this Friday, I'm going to take a look at the reading section of 6 previous tests. I'm going to learn some scanning techniques so that each time I do the test, I'm going to get a little bit faster. By the end of the week, I want to be 10 minutes faster than my first attempt.
Okay.
So it's very specific. You're going to do 6 tests and look at scanning techniques. It's measurable. You're going to be 10 minutes faster. It's achievable. That's not too difficult. You have enough time each day, just do 1 reading test. It's like 10 minutes or something. It's relevant because that's the section of the test that you're weak at. So it's not a waste of your time. And it's time bound. You set yourself a limit. I'm going to do this by Friday. So if you can apply that to each step, it just gives you more direction in your study, I think.
So what about incentivize?
To give yourself some reward for the effort that you're putting in. I tend to find that Japanese students are very self-critical. They'll focus on the mistakes they made. What they'll do is they'll say, oh, I did the 6 tests and by Friday I was only 8 minutes faster. I was 2 minutes short of my goal. And they'll be really hard on themselves for that. But what I should say is, no, you were 8 minutes faster. That's great. So you should reward yourself. So in your study plan, build in rewards. You know, as long as I do this, even if I don't achieve it perfectly, as long as I try to do it, then by Friday, I'm going to reward myself by buying my favorite snack from the convenience store or spending 15 minutes scrolling on the internet or having some chocolate. Whatever it is that makes you feel good, reward yourself.
Do you think that all of these things, so like prioritizing, finding out your weaknesses or finding out the most important things to focus on, and then strategizing, setting yourself up for success, and then incentivizing, rewarding yourself and acknowledging your success, it's all kind of, it's about confidence, right?
Yes. Confidence is key when you're doing tests. I often hear from students, they'll have the experience, they've done a lot of preparation, they go into the test, they'll do the first section and they think, oh, you did really badly, and they kind of give up during the test.
Guilty. I do that as well sometimes.
And if I understand why you want to feel like that, but I always tell students, even if you make a mistake or even if you don't understand, you can do this. Actually, I have something that would explain this really well.
Okay.
Could we use your... I often give students this activity to do, and it shows them that as long as you're confident, even if you don't understand the questions, you can still actually get some good points.
Okay.
So here's a passage. Now, this passage is complete nonsense. It has no meaning at all. Could you read the passage?
Okay, so the natty bing is one of the biggest swerks in the world. There are 5 swerks in the bish bash bosh. Some people like to woggle with their swerk in the fazish.
Okay, do you understand the meaning of that?
No,
it has no sense. But don't panic. Have confidence. Take a look at question 1 and see if you can answer.
Okay, so question 1 is, what is the natty bing? And I can say the natty bing is one of the biggest swerks in the world.
Perfect. So that's your answer.
Bing. Okay. So basically, even if you don't understand the words, that doesn't mean that you can't answer the question, right?
Don't panic.
Well, do you have any advice for speaking tests?
I think one thing I'll often tell my students with speaking tests is not to over-prepare. I'll find that students will sometimes memorize long passages for them to say. They'll look at past tests and say, oh, this type of question often comes up. I'll just memorize a standard answer for this.
Yes.
And that's a big mistake because a native speaker can always understand when someone is speaking spontaneously compared to when they're memorizing something that they've written. And did you know that in these tests, you'll actually get penalized? They'll take away points. Even if your answer was perfect with no grammatical errors, if they think you're speaking from memory, they'll deduct points from your final score.
That actually makes a lot of sense because when you recite something you've memorized, if you forget one word, you pause in really weird places in the sentence, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't sound
And
natural.
you kind of look up to the left or something, and that's
Yeah.
how you know you're memorizing, but if you look up to the right, it means you're thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. I can always tell when people are speaking, like reciting speeches and things, you can tell when they've memorized something.
So rather than memorizing it, the better technique is to think of bullet points of what you want to say, write down the bullet point, and then practice saying it spontaneously without any preparation 4 or 5 times. And you'll find that each time you do it, you'll use slightly different words, but that's really good because, like you said, if you're in the actual test and you forget one way of saying it, it's fine. You've thought of 3 or 4 other ways to say it. You can use one of those.
There's one more thing that I wanted to ask you about. Some people might have a test coming up tomorrow or very, very soon, and they don't have time to do any extra preparation.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for people that have tests really soon?
So we've talked a lot here about how confidence is key, and you'd be surprised at what a huge difference it can actually make. So to kind of trick your body into physically thinking you're more confident, there's a really simple technique you can use called strike a power pose.
Okay.
So what that means is you stand with your legs shoulder width apart, shoulders back. You breathe in 3 times deeply through your nose and out through your mouth. And then you shake your arms and legs to get rid of all that nervous energy, and then smile. Walk into the test and you'll be much more confident.
Thank you very much. So basically confidence is key.
Confidence is key.
And good luck to everyone who has a test coming up soon.
Good luck.
Good luck, guys. See you next time.
Bye.
今試験に向けて勉強している方に宿題があります。今週の簡単な学習計画を立てること。そして次の3つのポイントを忘れないでください。No.1 Prioritize 集中して取り込む分野を1つ決めましょう。No.2 Strategize 賢い目標を立てましょう。No.3 Incentivize目標を達成したらどんなご褒美を得られるか決めましょう。ちなみに私たちのブログには英語勉強法に関するアドバイスがたくさん載っています。自信を持って英語を話したいという方はぜひ読んでみてください。See you next time! Bye!